Hello, YouTube. This is the Galley La Podcast, and this week we are going to be doing a review of Wano Act 1. We're going to have to divide it up into three or maybe even four, because of just the expansiveness. So we may be spoiling you in reference to the new arc, so keep that in mind. Let's just see, Gboss, what's the current chapter I think we're on right now? We're 1064.
Yeah.
Up to 1064. So keep that in mind generally when you're listening to this, but I think overall we can just stick to this arc. I don't think we're gonna have to grab onto anything future, but anyways, this is Akainu Fanboy, other guys Gboss. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. So starting off with chapter 909 to 910, I think the initial entrance in the Wano was like really beautiful and really creative with the big koi fish and the water. And I think the anime really did a great job with this too. And there was actually a pretty good crew dynamic as well with, I guess you could call them the swirly hat pirates, like Sanji's half of the crew that was separated. So, initially you kind of get that good feel. It's like, okay, cool, you get a nice little dynamic going on right here. Um, G-Boss, do you have like any thoughts of like kind of the initial part of Wano? Like the immediate interest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get to the so this spoils all the way up through the end of Wano, this discussion. But one of the things I like that was pointed out when we were climbing the waterfall, like Sanji specifically pointed out that it was fresh water and not salt water that they were sailing in, which relates back to what we find out at the end of Wano about the about it just being rainwater filling up the lower Wano.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
it's just like those little like throwaway things that you kind of dismiss, but then it turns out to be something.
Yeah, and it is cool like how Sanji was the one to notice it and everything. And I'd say kind of unfortunately you kind of lose this dynamic too, kind of the unique aspect of the crew. You do get a more like, let's say, Frankie, Usopp, Robin, Zoro. Like those are the type of roles they would do. You know, and so I think in that respect with Act 1, the characterization of Straw Hats is playing out initially, right? You do kind of have them living out the way they would do, but then it quickly fades off into the distance as you start to get into Act 2,
Yeah.
Them actually doing stuff kind of gets greatly reduced. You kind of maybe have like Sanji, Robin, Zoro, and Luffy, and that's it. And the rest of the crew kind of fades off. And then it's just focused more on the scabbards.
Yeah. But
So
we'll get to Act 2 later, but
yeah, I just want to like note like it is cool to kind of see this initial crew dynamic at work, with them showing their characters in Wano, but then it just kind of dies off a bit.
yeah.
Pretty quickly. So going into chapter 911 too, Tama though, I think she was like a really great character in this arc. And I did like the connection with Ace, and I like just who she is and how Luffy's rescuing her right off the bat, and you get to see him use Future Side on the fodder on the beach too. And no, it's a cool dynamic. She has a unique ability, and no, I mean she's one of the few side characters that I think I really liked in this arc.
Yeah. I kind of in rereading it, her whole thing about not being able to eat and everything, that I think that's a great. She was written well, and she's not like an annoying type of character that sometimes we see introduced. And I think she fits really well into everything.
Yeah, and she has a good dynamic with Luffy too, and I think that scene really stood out to me, especially in the anime where he tells her that Ace is dead, and he just says it so matter of fact. And I thought that was like a really powerful character moment for Luffy too, on so many levels too. And it's rare that you get that, especially with kind of a more gaggy character like Tama and everything. And I kind of think that contrast of Wano of like starvation kind of works into well how Luffy wants a big feast, and everything like that. And we obviously get more of an insight into that later on in the Wano, but it is interesting to see how Oda kind of sets up that foundation in Act 1.
Yeah. And I mean, that's basically what he's fighting for. I guess in addition to what he's fighting for with Momo, he's fighting for Tama's part of it too, like the people of Wano, because he has that sort of connection to them now. Even though he's not, it's kind of fascinating because you look at all the different places that he liberates and whatever, and he doesn't. He just does it because he likes people. He doesn't do it for anything other than that.
It doesn't seem he's like living by an ideal, and he says he doesn't want to be a hero, but inadvertently kind of becomes a hero though, which is kind of like almost every time, So going so one instance of this obviously was when he comes across Hawkins, and I think the thing with Hawkins, I had like a lot of, I was excited to see him off the bat. Wanted to see more from him, I think too. Like I get it, he's going against Zoro and Luffy and everything. Later on, I wanted to see him kind of play more of a role because he was like a supernova, and he did. I think his ability has like a lot of potential for a lot of broken stuff, but I think kind of Oda fell short with what he ended up doing with his character. But like, let's just say the initial exchange right off the bat, I thought that was good and well done. When it came to Wano with Hawkins. Yeah.
I mean, it was fun to actually see him do something.
Yeah.
And I think this is like one of the few times that Zoro gets injured in the post time skip, from what I remember. So
nails.
Yeah. But yeah.
And also, real quick, but that was a wholesome moment to see Luffy and Zoro, see each other again. Especially like in reference to the reader, it'd been years since those two had seen each other, Yeah. So, that was pretty terrific too in itself. And so I thought that was pretty good, and like I said, I just kind of wish he did a little more later on. One note I wanted to bring in how the Kietsu blade and everything in chapter 912.
Yeah.
This is part of the reason why I'm not as big as a Zoro stan, is because I think Oda had an opportunity to fix this, and it's not unique to Wano, so I don't want to be super critical, but he does not like name swords, He gives like 3 grades of swords, and the kind of the lore in the universe behind the swordsman is really poorly done in the series, because we only know like a couple of really, really top tier swordsmen, and I'm not going to put the scabbards in there and I'm going to get more on that later, but there were so many opportunities for Oda to be like, oh yeah, this guy has like a, so-and-so a great sword and all this stuff. Like Holden, for example, it could have just even been like a low tier sword, but just at least like give it a name, like show like intention this type of universe, when it comes to like the lore of a swordsman. But he had so many opportunities to do this throughout Wano, but he just didn't do it. The only swords we really know about are Zoro swords and Mihawk, and that's it. I don't know. I know that sounds like a weird critique, but it's like you think he would have developed or elaborated a lot on what it means to be a swordsman in the Swordsman Island, you know?
Yeah, I know a big complaint, but I think we'll get to our really big complaints in the Act 3 video. But I think that especially people thought it was going to be a kind of Zoro-focused arc, which is kind of expected because he's a swordsman, and we learn later that he has like connections to Wano from when he was a kid, and people were thinking like with Oda specifically bringing up like the Kitetsu too, it's like, well, Zoro should see if he could. They thought he was gonna like swap out his swords, and he specifically says to Luffy, "Oh, I want to take a look at that sword," and then Oda just kind of drops it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't even know what even happened to it, because I think Luffy got beaten with it on him when Kaido knocks him out.
Yeah, that is funny. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, well, I guess when we review Act 3 or 2, we can go into like what happened to it.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just one of the weirder things of the series because like when Shigi kind of goes through all the grades of the sword in the sword shop, you're like, oh wow, Oda might really develop this, especially since like this is Zoro's dream and everything, you know. But then he kind of like just drops it, you know, and then just like he kind of treats it like the 6 powers thing, you know, from the CP9.
yeah,
A little bit. I mean, sorry, the power levels. My apologies. You know that for Rokuju, the big dude, the the egg looking guy.
yeah,
You know, Oda kind of just dropped that in, and he kind of did the same thing with the sword grades. And it's like, well, that's fine, but like this is a part of Zoro's dream, so it's kind of a weird thing to drop. You know.
yeah.
I guess that's kind of my whole point with that. But moving on from it, I don't want to beat that one up too much. But I thought the sumo stuff was fine, but I think it was a bit too much of panel time. Would you agree on that point?
Well, especially in the anime where they extended it to like a whole thing. But I mean, I actually kind of like the whole town section, because we get to see Luffy and Zoro help out people, and we get introduced to Kiku and everything, and Suru, Kinemon's wife, and we also get introduced to the greatest character, Batman.
Yes.
But I don't know. I thought that this went well with the plot because it kind of brought down Kaido on them. It made sense for the plot for it to happen the way it did.
I love the gradual build up to it, actually, where Luffy's fighting fodder on the beach, quick thing with Hawkins, and then he takes out the sumo, and then he's like fighting with Batman, and then he starts fighting Hold'em.
Yeah.
And then Jack comes in.
Yeah.
You know? So I did love that gradual build up. I thought that was really great, actually.
Yeah, and then Law was like, "What are you doing?" and he goes to confront Hawkins.
Yeah. No, I thought that was pretty terrific.
Yeah.
One note though, I did note in chapter 917 that Jack controls Curry. You know, whatever nitpick, I guess, but you never found out anything about King's territory or the other Flying Six. I guess Queen, you could say just the prison.
Yeah.
And Avudan, I guess, and that's it. But I assume Queen would have had more territory than just a prison, but who knows? I guess.
Yeah.
Just kind of noticed that omission on Oda's part there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you have anything to say on that point, but
Well,
and then
yeah,
sorry, go. Yeah.
I was gonna quickly say, I think that just the whole, because we're dealing with a whole country, just like hopping between different locations, and I mean Oda establishes them early on, but later on we keep going to all these different places. It's hard to keep a sense of, like, okay, where are we now in terms of the story? Like, even with like, people say that Dressrosa was really confusing, like what was happening where, but you can kind of keep track of everyone doing everything because they weren't as split up, whereas here we're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll get to that in part 2 because I think that's the biggest offender there.
Totally. Yeah, like part 1, I thought like gave me a lot of hope, and it provided a good foundation. It was relatively like coherent, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the themes I thought was a kind of, I mean, yeah, so it was cool to see the Hawkins Law clashing a bit. Like, I wanted to see a lot more with that because their powers, I think, are very similar, you know, in 917. That would have been cool to see more of. And they kind of set up a theme where, in what was it, chapter 919 with the school children, where one of the students says, "It's a very bad thing where you let in people and ideas that are harmful to the nation. Countries from across the sea desire to take many things from Wano." So I don't know if you could see that as like a type of foreshadowing towards the end with Green Bull. Aside from that, though, that theme, at least right now in the story, hasn't been particularly pronounced, you know. I think this kind of the irony is that I know I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I think it is relevant to this point, where Momo kept the country closed off. So he kind of has the same position as this girl right here, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
So I think there's kind of an irony. We get through all of Wano, and then they're kind of stuck in the same relation with the Wano and the rest of the world, you know? You can, I wouldn't say that's like a negative or a critique. I just like found that interesting. Where domestically the country changed quite a bit, but internationally not much has changed, basically. Even though they went through all that rapid work and hard work and everything. Things are still relatively the same in regard to Wano.
Yeah. But yeah, I like that we have that introduction of like the warped views of like the youth of Wano, because it's just what they've been taught this whole time for 20 years about the Kozukis, and I think that's really an interesting way of doing that. And Oda's done that with like back in Dressrosa with King Riku, like portraying him as a villain that attacked his own people.
Yeah, right.
But I think this is even more like ingrained into the culture.
Yeah, totally. And there's some suggestions at the end of the arc. Not much has changed in a way, which, you know, obviously we can talk about that later. But I think that's an interesting reference point. That Momo does save everyone, but has he really changed the hearts of the people? How deeply ingrained are the lives? And I think that's would be a really cool, complex theme that Oda maybe potentially could draw on more later, you know, but we'll have to see. It's kind of easier to beat someone in a fight than like change their heart a lot of the time, you know. So I'm curious to see how that gets elaborated more. But also, I want to give Oda credit I remember where I was when I read the chapter, when he brought in the concept of time travel, and I was terrified. Yeah. I was like, this could destroy the entire series. Like, I think time traveling and bringing people back from the dead are some of the worst aspects. That like two things that could just destroy a series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Naruto.
So I was terrified. Oh yeah, exactly. It goes without saying, prima facie. But yeah. So I don't know. What were your thoughts on that? Just the whole time traveling section, and did it benefit the series, or did it it didn't mess up the series? I don't know. How did you see it?
I don't think that it messed up the series at all. In fact, I think it made me even more curious because later on we learn about Toki coming from the Void Century. And that makes me think about like, where is it now? Where's the fruit now? And also, I like the fact that it's not really a time. It's not like a free time travel power. It's specifically like time jumping only into the future. I don't know if she said like how specific it was that she could use it, or if it's like only 20 years that she could go, because she was this is getting onto like Act 2 stuff, but when she was going into like when she was surrounded when she first met Odin, she was gonna jump again. So I don't know if she would have gone 20 years into the future then or what, but I like that it's not as broken as it could have been. Yeah, because if that's the case, then if someone has it right now, they can only do stuff like in the future.
Yeah.
It wouldn't affect the past at all.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where you get into the time paradoxes and stuff that can just confuse and muddle a series.
It just takes away tension from the entire series too, because there's no final consequences, because you could always go back in time and just fix it.
Yeah.
You know? That's what I mean. Like, it just kills the story.
Yeah, and it's like the whole thing with like bringing people back from the dead. Like, Brooke's the only one that has that power, and it's only for him.
Yeah. Right. There's no oh man. You know what? Was it Edo Tensei? Was that it?
Yeah, from Naruto.
Oh gosh. Okay. Sorry. We won't talk about it. But yeah. So, anyways, it was well done. Yeah, and I think you're right. It did kind of bring more intrigue with Toki coming from the past. There's one thing I will say, and I also did like how she didn't come back in the rest of the story. From what it seems like, she's dead. You know.
Yeah.
I think it would have been. I don't know. There's a chance she's still running around, but I think she would have showed up in Wano if that was the case. You know.
Well, I'll get to the Toki complaints in part 2, but
yeah. Just a note on that point, but
yeah.
921 I'd say was one of my favorite chapters. I think.
Which one was that one?
That was in regard to when Kaido comes down in the clouds.
Oh,
with
yeah.
Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Just the building up of it was terrific. I remember people flipped out just with Ashura Doji getting a hit in on Jack.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, you know.
Yeah, because he like took down all of Zoe.
Right. And everybody's like, well, this guy must be like first commander level or something. You know, people are going nuts.
Yeah.
Like the power scaling, you know, just from that clash.
Yeah.
You know, it was cool. I liked Jack's design as a character. I can't say per se I like his character. I kind of do, but you know, they're clashing, and then you just see the clouds come in, and just I don't know. Kaido has some of the best entrances I think in the story, from when he jumped on Kid Apu and Hawkins, and then to this was just terrific. Just to see him climb down, and you just see this beast. And I think some people may have predicted him to be a dragon, but there weren't that many people who did, you know. The anime royally screwed this up because you see kind of transform while he's drinking into a dragon, and so it takes away the tension with this. But in the manga, it was really, really well done. And like I said, the build up for the Jack fight, and you're like, whoa, whoa, that's pretty crazy. Then it tops it off with you see Ido just coming out of the sky, and Jack's like shaking, like, yes, sir. Like, I'll get the straw hats, you know?
Yeah.
That was terrific. So I like that a lot.
Yeah. I definitely, yeah, I think that was yeah, I think it was a good reveal, but it kind of put into perspective like Momonosuke's fruit, like Kaido being the same thing. And when I was reading it, I didn't draw a parallel like that right away, but in hindsight, it's really good.
Right, and I think the fake out. Just one quick thing, and you know how Oda be with his fake outs and all this stuff, but
yeah,
Crew not dying there didn't particularly bug me, you know, and I thought it was a nice little motivation for Luffy to attack Kaido. My point is, like, this was one of many, 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 many fake outs in this arc, and I just noticed, like, okay, that's the first one. We have a long ways to go, you know. That's where it gets a little okay. It begins, you know. So. Yeah. I don't know, like, obviously later on, but I just want to make it note this is, like, kind of the first big fake out in this arc, and, yeah, so that's fine, but, you know, started to see a pattern. Also, I like the cover story in chapter 922 with Koala training the Dugongs. That was actually really cool cover story, just throwing that in there, but, also, I noticed with Kaido's gag of him being drunk, there's a strong contrast with him and Big Mom, because Big Mom's gag actually, like, leads to her downfall and pain a lot of the time. And I remember everybody was like, oh, well, if Big Mom's gag led to her pain and downfall, maybe Kaido, they're gonna, like, poison the alcohol, weaken him, and then they can take him down. I remember that was a pretty common theory, you know?
Yeah.
But, like, you know, he's drunk, just kind of hitting the buildings, and, like, nothing's happening to him, you know. So it is interesting, the difference in treatment between Kaido and Big Mom when it comes to Oda.
Yeah, but I mean, just in the long run, I think that Kaido, like, that gag with Kaido wasn't really built upon that much. I mean, he had his, like, different, like, drunk phases in his fight with Luffy, but it's just kind of there.
Yeah. Like, Big Mom's, like, hunger thing, like, literally could lead to her death.
Yeah.
You know? It almost did on a couple of occasions, you know? So...
Yeah, and it's a big part of her character.
Right. Kaido is just kind of a side thing, you know? Yeah, it's nothing super crazy. And also, yeah, just another note in 922, I did kind of like the back and forth between Hawkins and Jack, where Hawkins gave out false information that basically to take out the Straw Hats and everything, you know, and everything like that. Just kind of the strategizing between him and Jack doing that. And I just kind of wanted to see more cunning. Like I said, if you're a supernova, I think in the story you should have just more of a role, even if at the cost of everybody else. And I think, again, one of the reasons is just because it's just Wano, and the Scabbards and Momo are just going to have an excess focus. Luckily, with the treatment of other supernovas in the story right now, that's not an issue because you don't have all these characters flooding the screen, you know. But anyways, yeah, so 923, I love that moment where, you know, Luffy's like, he's beating all these, like, you know, minor bosses, and then he gets to the big boss Kaido, and then he just hits him with that speed blitz in Gear 4, and I remember that was just such an iconic moment for the series, you know? Because you see how powerful Gear 4 is. And I like the Speed Blitz kind of interpretation you get more in the manga rather than the anime where they slow it down a little bit more. I just love the panel, just boom, KO, done. Over.
Yeah. And it really shows the disparity in strength between them. Like,
yeah.
And you think like, wow, like we've seen Big Mom, but like Kaido's like on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Like fighting one-on-one with an emperor.
Right. You know, because Luffy has some big W's with Doflamingo and Katakuri and Cracker.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just one shot. You know? It's insane to think about. I mean, the moment still, like, kind of hits me to this day. So, and then especially, like, and then right after that, Luffy just gets dropped off with Kid. They said, like, I'll take you down, Kaido, you know?
Yeah.
Well, spoiler, Kid doesn't take down Kaido, but, you know,
yeah.
I'm gonna say that's a criticism, you know, where Kid has a lot more character motivation, and they kind of established it early on that Kid wanted to take down Kaido, you know, didn't get the opportunity to.
Yeah.
Anyway, that prison scene, love it though. Really great scene. I think it's iconic. Just phenomenal part of the arc and everything there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then that leads to what I consider to be the low point of the arc. But we'll get to that in the Act 2 review.
Yeah, so I'd say like my overall analysis, I like the scenic introduction, and I like all these great things that we see with Wano. I did like some of the character outfits and all this stuff too. I think the opening scene with Zoro, the anime is terrific, and it was cool to see some of these characters interact and everything. I think my big critique really isn't even with Act 1 per se. It's more like a lot of these great seeds that were growing in the first act kind of get forgotten, you know?
Exactly, yeah. It's
and then it just gets smothered with shit. Sorry, you know?
Yeah, it sets up a lot of plot points that either don't get paid off or get paid off in a very rushed sort of way.
Right.
Like not up to Oda's standards from previous arcs.
Yeah, because I would say throughout this video, I praised a lot of Act 1, and the only critiques are really in reference insofar as, like, stuff is just getting dropped off.
Yeah, you know? Stuff that happens later on in the arc.
Yeah, like, I think really my only negative was, like, the sumo thing. You know, it was a little too long, and that's it, you know?
Yeah.
I liked everything else. It was really good first part. I think it was just a beautiful scenic thing, and it was pretty great.
Yeah, and just like the art design of Wano is really good. Just you can tell why Oda wanted to get to this arc, because I think he said this was one of the arc he wanted to do the most, which I mean kind of spoils it for the reader, because it's like, oh, this is the story I wanted to tell, and it wasn't it didn't live up to our expectations.
Yeah, right. And I like just one editor note. It doesn't mean anything coming from me, but I would just greatly have reduced the Sumo Kiku stuff substantially, just to give more time for breathing for the other stuff later on, you know.
I'm not even mad about that. It's just
I'm not mad. I'm just saying for like the sake of the totality of it, you know. That's it.
Well, no, I would be fine leaving it as is. Just give the other stuff later on, especially in Act 2, give it more time to play out, like the Sumo and Kiku stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that would be the critique. Like, not lessen, but put more in. Which I think the anime was trying to do. But I haven't watched the anime of Wano, but I heard that people prefer it over the manga in some parts. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say generally, yeah, that'd be my position too, for sure. But yeah, overall though, yep, that's my take. Do you have any closing thoughts on this?
just Act 1 was a good introduction to the arc. I wouldn't say it's the pinnacle of the arc, but the more it goes on, the less good it gets.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sure. All right. Well, I'm glad we finally got this one done and everything. And thank you everyone for listening. And eventually we'll get to Act 2. It's gonna be a bit, but yeah. So, anyways, thanks for listening, everyone. And so leave a like and subscribe, and we will see you guys soon. Peace.
See ya.